Well, well, well. Good morning. I have no idea if it's working or not, but I'm going for it. Today is the 251st day of the year, and I have some fantastic news. Today's lesson, 251. I am in need of nothing but the truth. And it's...
No, it's 252.
You're right.
But it was yesterday's lesson.
You're right, but I still don't need anything but the truth. Thank you, my dear. You're absolutely right. The truth is that it's lesson 252. The Son of God is my identity. Hey, hi everybody. I'm the Son of God. And a lot of stuff about my capital S self, my big S self, in today's lesson. And so today I'll read from Understanding A Course in Miracles Workbook lessons, How to End the Blame, Shame, Guilt, and Fear with Love and Forgiveness. If you've got your own copy of A Course in Miracles, now's a great time to grab it. Lesson 252 is about page 420. It is on page 420 exactly, but it's encapsulated like the second half of the book has some themes, and we're in special theme number 4. What is sin? And I read this whole introductory part for these 10 lessons yesterday. Today I'm going to focus on what Tom put in his book to kind of help us along in this area, some extra notes in that specific zone. So in the book, if you're following along in the blue book, page 419, what is sin? Sin is insanity. It's the means by which the mind is driven mad. It seeks to let illusions take the place of truth. And being mad, it sees illusions where the truth should be. Sin is a real pain in the tuchus. I'm going to read from Tom's notes. Then I'm going to read lesson 252 for today's reading. Thanks for being here, everybody. All right, what is sin? The central theme for lesson 251 through 260. Sin is the means that allows illusions to take the place of truth. Sin is insanity. Sin is a childish game that the Son of God plays to pretend he is something other than... I'm going to make the font size a little bit bigger here so I can see it a little bit easier. There we go. Sin is a childish game that the Son of God plays to pretend he's something other than as God created him. Unfortunately for us, we have forgotten that it's a game of make-believe and now perceive the illusion of lack, limitation, and separation to be real. Due to our belief that sin is real, we have become split-minded. Our split mind is delusional and insane. We've become unable to differentiate between make-believe and our true identity as our higher self, our big S self. Sin is the home of all illusions. Sin is the proof that illusions are real and that God's Son is no longer perfect, whole, and complete. Sin is the means for insane minds to let illusions replace the truth. The body is an instrument the split mind made for the purpose of self-deception. Your ego claims the physical body is your home and that the brain is your mind. The ego uses the game token we call the body as its tool to prove that your safety and existence is contingent upon the well-being of the body. The ego claims that you are the body, and the body is you. When you accept this erroneous belief, you must also accept the limitations that come with the body. The goal of the body's physical senses is to confirm and bear false witness that the illusion of lack, limitation, and separation is real. To sense is to not know. Physiologists explain that the physical senses are designed to confirm what your mind already believes to be true. The physical senses are not objective cameras to the world. Instead, they're merely thought confirmation devices. Your senses only confirm your mind's beliefs and ignore any evidence that would be contradictory. Thus, the senses fulfill their purpose of providing false evidence that supports your ego's erroneous beliefs about you, your world, and your God. Sin is self-inflicted nonsense. Sin is the belief in lack. When you believe that you're not perfect, whole, and complete, you automatically accept the idea that you're missing something to make you whole. You accept the idea that you have needs that must be met if you are to be safe, happy, and survive. This belief implies that there is something outside of your own mind that has power over you. Sin is your acceptance of the ego's belief in lack, limitation, and separation. The ego uses the body as the means to make it appear that there are outside forces beyond your control that can make you happy or sad. The body proves that you're not the mind and can be hurt. To the ego, the purpose of the world is to bear false witness that your mind is not the source of your experiences. If your ego can prove that your mind has needs and lacks the creative ability to keep you safe, if your ego can prove that your mind has needs and lacks the creative ability to keep you safe, your decision maker will accept and follow your ego's plan for its own survival. The purpose of the body is to provide a vehicle the ego can use to fulfill the ego's plans for its protection, safety, and continued insanity. The body's purpose is to strive, and the ego's aim for striving is to make the false true and the true false. The body provides the means for the ego to argue for its rightness over your happiness. The body falsely proves that your ego's little s self is your reality, and the higher self, the big S self that God created, is the illusion. Sin, guilt, and fear are interrelated. I have to go take the birthday cakes out of the oven. I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Ziggy, stop. Woo-hoo-hoo, those look great. They are not done cooking yet. Ziggy, stop. Ziggy, stop. They are not done baking. They are still liquidy. So I'm going to let them keep going. Don't let me forget. Sin, guilt, and fear are interrelated. Sin, guilt, and fear comprise the unholy trinity of your egoic thought system. When you find one, you will find the other two beliefs. Sin is the belief in lack, and lack engenders fear. In the egoic world, when you commit a sin, you're coming from fear and trying to reduce or minimize the fear that you are currently feeling. Yet the only reason you're in fear is because you believe
Thank you
lack.
for joining us. Lee will keep reading in a moment.
Hi,
Thank
Adriana.
you for your patience.
Oh boy, did I hit mute? Hi there, I'm back. Sorry. I just came back and started reading and everything. Forgot I hit mute. Can you hear me all right now? I hope so.
Yes, we can.
All right, fantastic. Well, the cakes are not done baking yet, so they're still in the oven. So let's not forget about that. I'll take care of it as soon as we get done with
Can you please take the reading from the...
Sure can.
Okay.
We're talking about the body falsely proving your ego's little s self is the reality, and the big S self that God created is the illusion, the upside-down world of duality. Sin, guilt, and fear are interrelated. Sin, guilt, and fear compromise the unholy trinity of your egoic thought system. When you find one, you will find the other two beliefs. Sin is the belief in lack, and lack engenders fear. In the egoic world, when you commit a sin, you're coming from fear and trying to reduce or minimize the fear that you're currently feeling. Yet the only reason that you are in fear is because you believe in lack. Fear and sin, which is your belief in lack, are always coupled together. Guilt is always associated with lack in your world. All three beliefs occur in unison. You cannot escape the experience of sin, guilt, and fear without removing and healing all three of these erroneous beliefs from your delusional mind. Your ego has developed its own survival plan to ensure that its needs are met. The ego never questions its own belief in lack, limitation, and separation. That is the true source of this fictitious problem. Instead, the ego's plan always starts out with the confirmation that lack is real and there are outside forces that can directly affect your inner peace. The ego does not know who you are. The ego fails to recognize the truth that your higher self has no needs. Therefore, the ego always assumes that sin, lack, is real. And that's the problem. The ego then attempts to solve this fictitious problem of needs that only exist within the delusional mind that believes that sin could be real. Assuming sin to be real, the ego's plans center around one of two possible solutions to this fictitious problems of need and lack. The first solution is simply to take it from somebody else that you perceive what you need. Take it. Take whatever you need from somebody else. The attack may be direct or indirect, but the solution will entail some form of taking. This is based on the ego's belief that someone's loss can be another's gain. This first solution reinforces your ego's belief in separation and the reality of form. This solution embodies the belief that life is a zero-sum game. If I'm to win, someone else must lose. It also flames the feelings of guilt. The second solution rests on the special relationship. A special relationship is a bartering transaction between two people. Each seeks to trade some of their limited resources in exchange for something that they perceive and need, which is of greater or equal, but usually greater value. The goal of the special relationship is to get a good deal. You want to give up as little as possible while maximizing the return on your investment. The special relationship also assumes that sin or lack is the reality of the world and that both parties have needs that cannot be fulfilled solely by the creative power of each party's own mind. To ensure that one gets their way, guilt becomes the favorite tool of manipulation and in the special relationship. If you're feeling guilty, you can be pretty sure there's a special relationship there that's getting used. We have all experienced manipulating and being manipulated by guilt. Our ego uses the blame, shame, and guilt game very effectively to obtain its own way. Projecting guilt is often used in the special relationship as each party attempts to make the other party feel guilty for any shortcomings in the relationship. It's got to be their fault. In this world of special relationships, we often vacillate between being an active guilt catcher or a guilt thrower. Often, we take turns and switch roles as each ego struggles for the rightness of its own plan. Most of you are probably familiar with the religious concept of sin. The common definition of sin would be to commit an offense or a fault of any kind. Depending on the religion, it may involve the breaking of religious laws or moral principles, typically through a willful act. This notion of sin implies that there is both a wrongdoer and something that has been wronged. When we look at the two solutions offered by your ego to obtain its needs, the first plan involves taking from another, would be the sin of stealing. The second plan, entering into a special relationship, would be seen as an act of cooperation and not a sin. But both solutions are ego's attempt to make the illusion of bodily needs become your reality. Therefore, both would meet ACIM's definition of sin. ACIM defines sin as a means of seeking to replace the truth with an illusion. Sin is your belief in lack, limitation, and separation. It is your belief that you could be something other than as God created you. Sin is your belief that your mind is not the creative power behind your experience and that there are outside forces that can rob you of your inner peace and happiness. Earlier, I stated that sin, guilt, and fear are interrelated and occur simultaneously as one grouping. You can't have one without the other two occurring. You need 3 legs for this stool. Most can easily relate to the idea of guilt being associated with the common definition of sin that involves the wrongful taking from another. Yet guilt is not necessarily associated with the special relationship. Most perceive a special relationship to be a mutually agreeable transaction, with each party gaining from the interrelationship. So why would I say that a special relationship automatically engenders guilt within the mind of each party? Well, on the conscious or subconscious level, when you believe that you have needs, you're admitting that you're incapable of being self-sufficient. A lot of guilt is self-guilt. It's not directed at the other party. You believe there's something wrong with you because you are not perfect, whole, and complete. Perhaps there's something wrong with you because you allowed someone to abuse you. Guilt is a natural result from these feelings of inadequacy. You either feel guilty for your inability to provide for yourself, or you project that guilt on another for their failure to provide for your needs. Many religions have the idea of original sin, or the idea that we offended God, and therefore we're being punished, and we've got to earn our salvation. Often we blame God for what we perceive to be God's failure to create us properly, or to take into consideration our special needs. Your ego tells you that if God would have done his job properly when he created you, you would be happy, or you would not have messed things up later. It's God, not you, who is to blame. Your own self-perceived inadequacies now become God's fault. Your ego has transformed an all-powerful God of only love into a limited God of lack, stupidity, imperfection, and whim. And that's cuckoo. I don't know if you can hear the cuckoo clock going off, but timing's just great here. According to our ego, if God made us imperfect, we can't trust God's plan for our happiness. God showed us he was incompetent when he created us. If we believe that we've offended or sinned against God, God cannot be pure love. Because of our ego's erroneous belief in a judgmental God, we must now fear God's retribution, do our penance, or somehow earn our redemption. A God that is only love has been transformed by our egoic mind into something to hide from and to fear. When the ego plans for our salvation, it is based on the idea that God's Son must earn his way back into heaven through penance or good deeds. It assumes that we are sinners and that paradise is lost. This belief that we have lost our divine birthright leads to our ego's plan to earn back God's love by our actions. With this idea that God's love could be earned, our ego has once again transformed a God of unlimited love and abundance into a tiny little petty God of judgment and conditional love. This is an egoic God whose conditional love and gifts can be purchased and acquired through bribes, negotiation, prayers, and good deeds. The ego's plan requires us to earn or purchase our way back into heaven. When properly understood, and if true, the ego's belief that we can do something to earn God's love would also be a sin. This is because such a belief implies we could earn something that God's already given us and never taken away. When you believe God's love can be earned, you're trying to make the illusion of lack, limitation, and separation real. Don't do that. Be aware that all plans that suggest you could earn your way into heaven are fear-based, and they keep you trapped in fear. Guard against plans that claim you can be saved or save another through good deeds or by second-party surrogates, for these plans disempower all involved. Your ego's plans for your salvation only keep you trapped within the belief that paradise has been lost and sin is real. They all strive to use the body as a tool to make amends for your assumed failure as God's sinful son. Only God's plan for our salvation will work because only God's plan accepts the innocence, guiltless, and sinless nature of God and His creations. Good people end up in their own hell because they refuse to forgive themselves for their own perceived failure to save or make another happy. This was always an impossible task. No one has the power to make someone else happy. To do so would deny them the freedom to use their creative power of their own mind as they desired. You and your ego believe they're too stupid to know what their own perfect plan for their reawakening should be. that only your plan, but not God's plan, will work. This belief would also deny and prevent you from exercising that same freedom. Each mind alone has the power of interpretation for their own experiences. That's why they created the experience in the first place. Each one's own mind assigns all meaning that each gives to any experience. Free yourself from your ego's belief in lack, and the sin, guilt, and fear that lack engenders will cease. There is no sin. Sin is self-inflicted nonsense. There's no lack in God. There's none in you. Your denial of your divine birthright can't make the illusion of lack, limitation, and fear real. Egoically, you need do nothing Drop your ego's plans that insist on making the illusion of sin real, and accept this fact. You remain as God created you. Deny your ego's belief in sin and reclaim your divine inheritance. And that is the end of Tom's notes. I'm going to read lesson 252 now. The Son of God is my identity. My higher self is holy beyond all the thoughts of holiness which I now conceive. My higher self's shimmering and perfect purity is far more brilliant than is any light I have ever looked upon. By the way, if you've got your book and you want to read along, this is your chance. We're on page 420 in the blue book. And just to give you a taste of what it's like, there's no higher self or big S self in here, but it starts out with a capital S. And so it gives Tom this higher self. And then I continue to use that because in the book it says it's shimmering, it's love, it's strength. And so it's helpful to come back to our higher self. So I'm saying those words on purpose. If you're reading along with me, you'll notice it just says it's. So here we go, one more time through this. The Son of God is my identity. I am my higher self. That's what that title means. My higher self is holy beyond all thoughts of holiness which I now conceive. My higher self's shimmering and perfect purity is far more brilliant than is any light I've ever looked on. My higher self's love is limitless, with an intensity that holds all things within it. In the calm of quiet certainty, my higher self's strength comes not from burning impulses which move the world, but from the boundless love of God Himself. How far beyond this world my higher self must be, and yet how near to me and close to God. Father, you know my true identity, my higher self. Reveal my true identity now to me. Who am now to me, who is your Son, that I may awaken to the truth in you and know that heaven is restored to me. And the notes on this lesson: the Son of God is my true identity. The child of God is my true identity. Only you can be what you truly are. You cannot be anything other than as God created you. You can attempt to deny that truth, but your denial can never change the truth that you are God's beloved child with whom He is well pleased. You are your higher self. You are the Christ. Tom?
Thank you, Lee. We're on this fourth theme of sin, and it's interesting whenever you look, and we're going to be spending 10 days on doing a deep dive into what sin is. And the first one yesterday was, I am in need of nothing but the truth. This one is the Son of God is my identity. And if you're coming from a traditional viewpoint of what sin is, you perhaps would start wondering, when are we going to talk about sin? What we're talking about is our true identity, and not what we commonly refer to as sin. You know, if we looked it up in Webster's dictionary, would say that sin is offending God or doing something to offend somebody. And yet this first one was, I am in need of nothing but the truth. And this one's saying that my true identity is the Son of God. And if we were to advance and just look at the headings, we'd see that the other ones are going to be following this whole idea that doesn't seem like we're talking about sin. And that's because this Course in Miracles has basically said that sin is insanity. It's self-inflicted nonsense. It's something that we, as a decision maker, came up with because we felt guilty. We felt that there was something wrong with us. There was some lack, limitation, separation that existed, that somehow we had lost paradise, and therefore we either had to earn our way back or were being punished and had to suffer until that sin was maybe burned off, or that this God that had condemned us or had been hurt by our actions, that type of God had somehow given us the boot, and now he acknowledged, or it acknowledged, that you definitely were an outcast. You were a sinner. You had done something wrong, and that you needed to be punished. And if you understand how a lot of times we define what God is as being all-powerful, all-knowing, omnipotent, all-present, that type of definition would imply that either God didn't know what he was doing, what she was doing, or that somehow what God had created had gone off the rails, that it did something somehow on its own, and that God wasn't really all-powerful, all-knowing. So what this lesson is saying is that the Son of God is my identity. This is the fourth theme that we've covered. The first one was on forgiveness, and all these themes are going to be redefining terms that if we looked in the Webster's dictionary, we wouldn't find that definition. And this is because if we follow those definitions, and the definitions and language is coming from a fear-based thought system, that language itself will constantly keep us trapped in fear. Why? Because within that language, the language itself assumes certain concepts, beliefs about who you are or what I am that is erroneous. It's incorrect. And therefore, if you use their language and their definitions, you will mistake where the problem is, and you will therefore struggle to find a solution because you'll be not digging in the right field. You lost your watch when you were entering your door. You dropped, or not your watch, your keys. You dropped your keys there in front of the door, or maybe in the parking lot. But because it's dark, you decide you're going to search for them under a lamppost that's 5 miles away because you can see. We're digging in the wrong field. So the ego doesn't understand what we are. It believes that there is a problem, which is this idea of our divine inheritance being lost, that God doesn't recognize. So we're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. So the second lesson is the Son of God is my identity. So let's just do a little thought experiment. And so get yourself in a comfortable position and just think and go on this journey of this thought experiment. And you're in front of a sheriff, and you've decided to turn yourself in. And the sheriff is there, and you're explaining your story, and you say that you have actually harmed an individual. In this case, you shot and killed somebody. In this case, you did it unknowing, but you did it, and you're sure that you did it. You saw the gun, you held the gun, you aimed it, you shot the person, and they dropped dead. And rather than continue on the run from the law, you decided it was best to just go in, confess, and throw yourself at the mercy, or receive the punishment that was due you, because after all, you had shed blood of somebody else. So you're explaining the story, and in this case, we'll just give the person that we're gonna that we shot a name, and we'll call him Wyatt Earp. Wyatt Earp was somebody I'm in Arizona, and Tombstone was the sheriff over there, at least historically. And now we're confessing that we shot Wyatt Earp, and we've gone in front of the sheriff that actually happens to be his brother. Okay, and is confessing this sin. Well, at first, the sheriff is a little complex. He hears your story, and he asks you to, can you explain when you did that? You said, well, I shot him last night. And the guy's is confused because this morning he had breakfast with Wyatt, his brother. And so he's kind of scratching his head, and he's, so you shot him? And he says, yeah, I met him. He was coming out of the bar or saloon or whatever, and I was sitting in wait for him, and whenever he was there, and with his back turned, I shot him, and he dropped dead. And again, the sheriff's wondering, well, what are you talking about? When did this happen? And he says, last night. I told you that happened last night. And the sheriff says, I'm not sure. You're sure you did that? He says, yeah. And just then, and the brothers, the sheriff says, well, I'm not sure you did that, because I had breakfast with him in the morning. And you get all upset. You say, no, that can't be true. I shot him. I killed him. I did it last night. I know. I did it in my dream. What was that? It says, you did it in your dream? Well, dreams don't shoot guns. Dreams are make-believe. My brother, hey, Wyatt, come on in here. Wyatt comes in. There he is, standing right in front of you. Well, your ego, no, this can't be. I'm right. You need to punish me. You need to hang me. And the judge, the sheriff says, well, Tom, you didn't do the crime, so you shouldn't do the time. This is what we actually are experiencing. The last theme said, this world, this time-space continuum that we are in, is not real from the sense that it has the ability to change the truth. You are not a body. Wyatt is not a body. He is a spirit, a mind, a consciousness. And with or without that body, you still exist. You are God's beloved child. And as we go through this thought experiment, we realize that if someone imagines something to happen, there's no blame, shame, or guilt that need to be associated with that. That's just needs for that person to awaken or reawaken, realize that he was dreaming, and accept that fact that in this case, as this lesson says, your true identity is the Son of God. And therefore, as the Son of God, you remain as God created you, perfect, whole, and complete. There is no sin. There is no death. There's just actors on this stage, this game board we call time-space continuum. We specify planet Earth and maybe this date in the year 2022. But it has no ability to change what you really are. You are mind. You are an individuated aspect of the holographic mind of God. And although you can place your awareness on various aspects, or you can imagine that you shot Wyatt Earp, in reality, nothing has changed. Wyatt still is God's beloved child. You still are God's beloved child. The game's been rigged. God's plan, theme 2, said salvation is not something you earn. Salvation is God's guarantee that sleeping minds must reawaken to the truth of what they really are. We're like a boy pretending that it's a dog. We've come here to experience what it would be like to be a dog, or in our case, what it would be like to be a loving aspect of that oneself in a world of seeming hate and fear, a world that seemed to be imperfect, where people seem to have needs, where they seem to believe that there were outside forces that could make them happy. Why? So that you could experience and practice being loving and experience the aspect of being helpful, or perhaps being forgiving. Because in the real world, where we're part, perfect, whole, and complete, there's nothing we need. There's nothing we lack. We're part of that oneness. And therefore, we can't practice, hone our skill, or actually demonstrate what love would have me do in heaven, so to speak, because there's nobody that needs our help. We're all together. We're all part of that oneness. So this lesson today asks us to remember the Son of God is my identity. You are, at least as the body, alien here. This is not your home. It's a game board designed for us to hone our skills and to demonstrate and be the principles that we've decided we want to use to guide our life in this world that seems to have real consequences that can cause not the body, but actually your essence to transform and to somehow lose its divine inheritance, its perfection. The first lesson asked us, let me just know the truth. Let me drop all egoic illusions, all egoic beliefs and misunderstandings of what I really am. The ego thinks you are the body. The ego thinks that you are part of a dream, and that dream has actually the ability to change what you are. The ego forgets that you are the dreamer, that you, as a holy child of God, have the power to be or imagine anything you want in perfect safety, because theme 2 said God's plan for your gentle reawakening is guaranteed. God has placed within you a guide, the Holy Spirit, that will guide you back to gently reawakening from that dream of separation. The dream is an illusion. It's you as decision maker that get to decide when you want to wake up. And that Holy Spirit, that higher self, has been placed in you to make sure that in this world of time and space, you're guaranteed to reawaken to the truth of what you are. Each is on their own perfect plan of reawakening, designed specifically for you, so that you could learn everything you came into this pretend world of separation, so that you could hone your skills and demonstrate what love would have you do. Drop the ego. Drop the advice of someone, something that believes you're the body, that you're limited, and go within and see the truth that you are consciousness, soul, mind, a creative force, and that you are as God created you. So, what are you going to do today? Are you going to listen or take advice for something that's actually your own creation of your beliefs and lack, limitation, and separation? Are you going to follow the advice for someone that doesn't know what you are, doesn't know your creative power is mine to control your experience, and that you are not the body, you are free, you are still as God created you, and nothing can source your experience but you, and nothing can rob you of your own inner peace? Will you tell your ego to stop planning and go about the roles that you've been assigned without becoming attached to the outcome? Play your role as you see fit, but realize that each is on their own perfect path, that you're not going to be attached to the outcome, because whenever you become attached to the outcome, you move into judgment. You perceive the results as an earner, and therefore you start playing the blame, shame, and guilt game, because you see that someone either failed to fulfill their role as you wrote the script, or that you failed, and therefore there's that blame, shame, and guilt. Fear arises anytime you believe you lack the creative ability to handle a situation. When you realize that you are not the body, you remain perfect, whole, and complete. You are God's treasure. The idea of sin, guilt, fear, separation, all vanish. This course is not really designed for you to just learn to manage or control your fear. It's actually designed for you to eliminate fear. But to eliminate fear, you need to redefine and reclaim the truth of what you are. So the first lesson or exercise in this 10 steps was, I am in need of nothing but the truth. The higher self knows the truth. This second lesson says, the Son of God is my identity. Trust the sharer, the Holy Spirit that knows the truth. You are as God created you, perfect, whole, and complete. And stop arguing for your littleness. Insanity is believing and doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Sin is self-inflicted nonsense. It's the belief that God's treasure somehow became God's biggest mistake. Trust and have faith that you have the power as decision maker to follow that voice placed in you for your return. Create a great day for yourself and your world. Namaste. The God in me recognizes that you are God's treasure, perfect, whole, and complete. And as I share that truth with you, since to give is to receive, I give that same truth back to myself. We're all got the power as decision makers to reclaim our destiny. There is no sin. Today, make that decision to accept the truth. Create a great day. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. That was wonderful. Really appreciate your perspective. And I'm so glad we got that stuff sorted out with Wyatt Earp, man. I was feeling guilty for a second there. I'm really glad we didn't end up killing him. Well, everything's going perfectly over here. The cakes came out of the oven and they're perfectly golden brown, so I'm off to take care of those kinds of things. I'm going to wrap up the stream because I'm doing a little differently than this morning. That won't stop us here in the room, though. I'd love to hear how this felt for everybody else. Tell me what you think. Or don't. Sounds like I've stunned you all quiet.
No, I do wanna share something, but I'm just having some kind of interaction here with my dad.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna jump in a moment. So.
No, that's no problem. Actually, my dad sent me something this morning that I want to share with you guys, and he's probably off on his flight right now. But he finally found the thing that he had been looking for from Marianne Williamson, the quote. And I think it's worth reading. It's amazing. So here it is. Marianne Williamson walks out onto a stage, and she's speaking to maybe 1,000 people. She says, I can't imagine dealing with the pressure of having to convince myself that I have something special to offer. I don't try to. I don't have to try and impress anyone. And if I'm not thinking that I have to, there's nothing to do but relax. I walk out on stage without feeling the need to make people think I'm special, because I know I'm not. I just talk to friends casually, and with enthusiasm. That's it. There isn't anything else. Everything else is just an illusion. The Son of God doesn't have to embellish who he is. We're tempted to think we're more impressive when we put on airs. Nothing could be further from the truth. We're not. We're pathetic when we do that. The Course states, grandiosity is always a cover for despair. The light of Christ shines most brightly within us when we relax and let it be, allowing it to shine away our grandiose delusions. But what we're afraid to do is to let down our masks. What is really happening here unconsciously is not that we're defending against our smallness. The ego is actually in those moments defending against God. Marianne goes on to say, as I interpret the Course, our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You're a child of God. You playing small doesn't serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We're all meant to shine, as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we're liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. A miracle worker is an artist of the soul. There's no higher art than living a good life. An artist informs the world of what's available behind the masks we all wear. And that's what we're all here to do. The reason so many of us are obsessed with becoming stars is because we're not yet starring in our own lives. The cosmic spotlight isn't pointed at you, it radiates from within you. I used to feel like I was waiting for someone to discover me, to produce me, like Lana Turner at the drugstore. Ultimately, I realized that the person I was waiting for was myself. If we wait for the world's permission to shine, we will never receive it. The ego doesn't give that permission. Only God does. And He has already done so. He sent you here as His personal representative and is asking you to channel His love into the world. Are you waiting for a more important job? There isn't one. And there you go, all choked up and doing it. We're here to shine. Let's do our best today to shine.
Well, I am in this situation. Thank you for reading that. I am in the situation that I'm going to have the hearing this morning. But yesterday I was notified by the lawyer that I am